Okay, welcome everybody. Let's call to order today's July 25th, 2023 Ways and Means Committee meeting. Everyone, please make sure you silence your phones. And again, remember that the microphones here in this room are very sensitive, so no cross talking because it will be picked up on the tape and confuse our ladies when they're doing the minutes. Again, everyone, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carrie Ann, roll call, please.
Nakasaki.
Present.
Russia.
Here.
Donald.
Here.
Stenbion.
Here.
Hines.
Here.
Sierra. Paduk.
Here.
Cheney.
Here.
Benton.
Here.
One absent.
All righty, good. All right, let's deviate a little bit. Rick, you wanted to make an introduction?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is Lisa Mugello. She is a recent addition to the law department, and she will be the one who's monitoring and sitting in on the Ways and Means Committee meetings going forward.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome,
Hi, Lisa.
welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, first up, Christian Farrell. This is a request supplemental appropriation of the capital project budget for Veterans Memorial Cemetery Columbarium Project. I don't think I've ever said that word before. This project has been approved under the 2023 capital plan as capital project number 134. Upon approval, a new capital project will be created in the amount of $150,000 to come from bonding. Motion in a second, please.
Second.
Cheney. Joan. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so the Columbarium project, the Columbarium gives veterans and their families an above ground option if they choose to be cremated. So at the Veterans Cemetery, obviously very traditionally in the ground, or you can be cremated and be put in the ground, but the Columbarium is an above ground option. We currently have one Columbarium in place. This will be a similar one matching, made of granite, 12,000 pounds. Current Columbarium has 96 units, 48 on each side. It's near full, so that was the idea, to get another Columbarium. First one, I believe, goes back, it was almost 15 years, and it has become a more popular option for those veterans and their families as far as the choice when a loved one passes away, a veteran. The above ground option, different than the in ground option, is $400. And each niche can contain two set of remains, but a veteran in the family would pay $400 to have a Columbarium spot.
And how many niches total?
96, 48 on each side. It's just like a single unit that's there.
Questions from committee members? Mr. O'Donnell.
What's the rate for England?
In ground is free.
How come we're charging for this?
That was set, I believe, by the legislature back in, it's a different option. Maybe it's, I'm not sure the question, I don't know why, but it's been in place. I think, first one again, back in 2008 or 2009, I double check that, where there's a $400 fee, but it's two sets of remains can go in there. Just further explain, so that if the veteran chooses to be buried in the ground, their remains, it's free for the veteran, but there's a charge if the spouse is a charge of $250, a half a plot is 4x4 rather than a traditional plot, which has a $500 fee for the spouse of the veteran. Veterans free in ground, whether they're buried traditionally or cremated, but spouse's charge is $500 if they're in the ground traditionally, $200 remain in the Columbarium is $400. That's just how it's been in place since I've been. Spouse of a veteran, again,
Then go in.
yeah, there's two sets of remains, so yes, so they both go in there.
$800?
No, $400 is one niche,
One.
yeah, and you can put two sets of remains, two urns, you can go in there.
Any other questions from committee members?
Yeah.
Mr. Paduk.
it's 12,000 square pound. I should mention, I'm not exactly sure. But, it's, what's that?
You'll get.
I would say it's, looking around this room, maybe it's about as high as, for the ground up to the top of the screens. And, not even as wide as this, so. If that gives you any, idea.
Could you send us over, actually, some
Oh, yeah,
pictures or something?
yeah, absolutely. I'll send you a picture
Send
of
us a little
the,
packet of information
for sure.
to the clerk of the legislature. That way she can,
I'll take a picture. Like I said, this columbarium is identical to the other columbariums currently in place.
Mr. Nagustakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you reach the maximum at some point, is it expandable or?
This columbarium is not expandable,
Are
but
others-
it is certainly, it's a structure that's made to fit. So we would have to order another one, or there are some other options that are considered, or cemeteries think of when someone chooses to be cremated. There are scatter gardens. There's some other things that we've been looking into as far as just different avenues that families might want to look into as far as if they choose that option. So, but this particular columbarium is not expandable.
You would have to get another one start from scratch.
It would be a third columbarium, above ground option. This one, again, the first one's been about 15 years.
Okay, first one took 15 years to fill up with the
Yeah.
same 96.
Same exact thing.
And the rate, the progression of people using that service has that increased over the
It's
last year?
picked
or
up, I
two?
would say it's been a little more of a popular option. Again, it comes with a cost, as Legislator O'Donnell, pointed out, where again, if someone wants that option, they certainly choose to, but if you don't want to have any cost as far as plots, then you just have it done, in the ground.
So you envision this one lasting, if
I
not
would say-
15 if
I'd
not
say-
15 years?
I would say,
a good-
I think 15 years is probably a good place to start as far as how long it lasts.
Good, thank you.
And are they near one another?
Oh, yeah, right, they're about 6 feet from one another.
Include a site plan.
Yeah.
We'll see where they are exactly. So, all right. Any other questions from other legislators? Let the record also reflect that the chairwoman of the legislature is here. Welcome.
Thanks.
All right. Hearing no other questions, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, Carrie. Have a good weekend. Okay, number one is being withdrawn, or I should say A is being withdrawn. So we're on to B. This is request to create a new fund, Fund 1090, to account for county grant funding. This fund will be rolled into the general fund for financial state purposes. Motion in a second, please. Joan, Brescia.
Sure. So as the auditors were just on site, they've recommended this for a few years now. We're
Yes.
implementing it and putting it in place. So basically, I'm just requesting that I can open up another fund for our grants, keep our grants separated from our operating budget. It'll be cleaner, easier to then report on how much money is truly in all the grants that the county has. Currently, we have about over 400 grants. So this is going to be a big undertaking. It's really being spearheaded by the budget department, but of course with our support. And we're going to be relying a lot on the departments as well, and IT and Cherry Road for the implementation.
Okay, yes, I know Nick has been asking
Yes.
about this for
Yes,
the last 3 or 4 years, so.
exactly. So now we can all sit.
Thank you.
So that'll actually help the budget process too. Now we're getting that.
The grant.
You take that fully.
A little more clarity. Mr. O'Donnell.
So you'll be creating a new IT program. Do all of this.
So it'll-
To put them in this new fund.
So it'll still be under Oracle, which is our financial planning system now, but we're creating a new fund, which then will need a lot of work on our back end to ensure the testing, to make sure that everything's.
Like create a new silo just for the grant.
Exactly.
So when you create that, and you program it that when the grant expires that month, it will be sold. So, really,
So
odds think that it's that. No question about it.
So yeah, so this will be more transparency. We'll be coming back to the table with grants to show where they've spent, when their deadline is. They'll be working budget to ensure that they're reconciled on a monthly basis, yes.
Right.
And when the grant ends, yes.
Right, so my point is, a lot of positions that are grant funds.
Sure.
And I like the committee to know each month, this one gets fired this month, so that you can do it when you start a new program for this. Have a program that kicks it out.
Sure, and we can also ask the departments when they're coming on their monthly
It's
visit.
good, that can make it work for you, getting that back.
Well, I like to pass on work, right? That's
I know what it is.
Sure.
But if they can do it, just press the button and it tells you which transfer is fine. This one.
Sure, it's never that.
That's all it is.
That was easy, right?
So I volunteered Deb for that. I did. But she's spearheading it. Give
You
her
worked
credit.
very closely.
Yeah. I have my back right now. I'm nervous.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Sales tax update.
Sure.
Discussion.
Sure, so we are paid up through July. Currently, we are 0.66% over budget, but compared to last year at this time, we're 5.11% over where we were at the same period of time last year. So that's great. The national trend is seeing that sales tax revenue is not as strong as it's been in the past. But considering that we are still over budget from last year, we're in a good place.
Questions from committee members or others? Pretty good news.
Yeah, very good. We'll take it.
We'll take it. Thank you.
Except you gave me more work to do. You're gonna press the button. You're gonna come press the button.
All righty, next up is Deb. Letter A is request supplemental appropriation to cover all 2022 year-end budget shortages. Motion in a second, please. Pat Jones, I'll second.
So this is just our final housekeeping issues for the end of 2022 to, create any budget shortfalls and check the budget in place.
Anybody have any questions on individual amounts? Mr. Hines?
Are you allowed to move ARPA money into the general fund?
So we're not moving it from the general fund, it's all the Carnegie fund right here. And this is what our auditors,
Says the general fund.
okay, so our auditors did tell us how to do this with that because,
So you're not allowed to do it?
well, it goes to the general, Carrie, I'm gonna let, how does that one work?
So initially, it was just a mess up before we came to the committee to really have our plan. This was done prior to that. Once
Okay.
the plan was completed, this is a
Okay.
correction to make sure that it is really being spent out of the ARP.
So is it going to the general fund or not?
No, it's going to ARP.
So should we change this document?
That's what they said.
That's like-
ARPA is one of, there's about 8 funds that get consolidated into the general fund, and ARPA is one of them. This has to do with part of the capital projects fund.
But he's saying that the account says going to the general fund.
I'm quite sure you can't co-mingle ARPA fund with the general fund. That's my issue. Leave it to you
Well,
guys.
see, so,
I'm
so
sure you
what,
guys
so
will
what
figure it
had
out.
happened originally, before we created that ARPA fund, we had taken some money out of the general
To pay
fund.
yourself back.
To pay for probably COVID, stuff or stuff like that.
So before the fund was created, like I stated, then this is going back to replenish the fund that initially came out of operating. It was caught on when our auditors did it, that it wasn't correctly moved back into the general fund to replenish the funding that we initially used before we came to the table with the ARPA plan.
And I have passed this through our auditors and they did it. Okay,
Mr. O'Donnell?
So the federal government allows you to backdate money that you previously spent when you got the money.
We're not backdating.
so we're not backdating, we're basically, we took money from the general fund at that time because we didn't have an ARPA fund. So basically, we're taking it from the ARPA money and putting it back in.
It's probably for masks and sanitizer.
Yeah, it is.
Like that.
Supplies, basically.
So maybe you know, I'm trying to backdate, but you spend money, or you get the offer money.
No, we didn't spend it before we got it. We just didn't have the ARPA fund before we spent it.
We didn't
Okay,
have the ARPA.
You were told
funded
you're getting
thing.
it, but you didn't receive it.
and no, we actually even did receive it, but we really, we spent it out of the general fund.
Somebody
I-
offices take
You know, but I can, if you recall before, we put it into the 1010 fund originally. Then we took it out and we put it in the 1100 fund, then we were, so then we put it back in the 1010, yes. And then when we
Without
create,
spending it.
we did spend some of it, we did spend some. And then when we did create the ARPA fund, everything went back in to the ARPA fund so that we could keep it well contained.
So back to what I just asked for on the fund, that's the whole reason. The ARPA fund wasn't available then. We created the fund, we're making the correction. The money was spent prior to that fund being created. So we used it from operating, then we came to the table to create the fund. It's not just a click of the button, we made the fund. And then it took us a little while for implementation of the ARPA funding, and then the auditors thought that that dollar amount needed to be corrected back
This
into.
did come from.
Okay, well, as long as we have documentation from others as this is their advice and this is what you need to do, then I think we're covered.
How much
So-
money you?
About 40,000, less than 40,000.
Yeah, 36.
1,400.
Actually,
36.
it's actually,
1,497.
yeah, yeah. But then there's some to capital.
It's about how much money the county makes with selling those 96
There you go.
items out of the.
We're gonna lose money. 32,900 plus something.
Yeah, right. All right, back on topic. Any other questions regarding this? Hearing none. All in favor as presented? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Budget update.
Okay, so basically, once our taxation is posted, which should come very soon now, our revenues will be in line with our 2022 revenues. On the expense side, you're going to see that the personal service and benefits are higher for 23 over 22. That is because in 23, in June, we had a third pay period. In 22, it was in July that we had the third pay period. So that's going to catch up to that next month. And basically, it's just the vacant positions that we continue to deal with.
Ms. Padus, update numbers?
Okay.
Vacant positions?
Okay, so in June of 2023, we had 368 vacant positions. June of 22, 331, and in June of 21, 341.
How much?
So 341.
141.
It's 368, baby.
Can I give you-
Yes.
No, not one button. If only it was one button.
All right. Any questions? Thanks, Deb.
Dang.
Next up, Mr. Wiley. Good afternoon. Eat sale partials, motion and second for discussion, please. Mr. Paduk, Mr. Gresham. Paul.
Okay, there's only one bid this month. It is for a property that is about 0.85 of an acre. This property has been on the leftover list since 2017. Total of $10,071 and $71.47 in base taxes due. Total of $16,129 and 18 cents in taxes, penalties, and interest. We had a bid on this property back in November of 2021 by one of the companies that was bidding on a lot of properties, and they bid 6,500 and then balked when it came time to pay the balance. So we pocketed the 10%. And we sent letters out again at that point to the joint property owners, and this is one of the responses, or I should say this is a response. It is an adjoining property owner has bid $600 on this property. I'm going to recommend that we do not accept this bid because again, the back taxes, the basement is really $10,000. The assessor says the property is worth $47,500. It is smaller than required by zoning. It's 2.5 acre zoning in the town of Crawford, ERA zone. This property is 5 of an acre, but it is a pre-existing non-conforming lot. It's possible that something could be done with it, and I'm glad to see an adjoining property owner would like to take the property, but not for $600. I recommend that we hold off for more.
All right. Questions from committee members? All right, thank you very much. Keep working on it.
Yep.
Next up, we have an addition from Mr. Hines. This is a resolution requesting the federal and state governments to provide assistance to Orange County businesses, individuals, and farmers affected by recent floods who are not otherwise eligible for federal and state aid. Motion and second, please, Mr. Hines, Mr. Perdue.
Okay, if you would be so inclined, if Mr. Mack could join me at the table, that Mr. Mack, I spoke to Brendan Casey. He's going to be our expert today on this issue. As all of you know, there was a massive rainstorm that affected the communities of Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery, Cornwall, West Point. Communities were devastated. There were just massive damage. I don't need to go over it. I know everybody knows about it. So FEMA has declared that the governments get aid for the damage they have, but they did not declare it an individual assistance FEMA grant. So the individuals, homeowners that suffered huge damages get nothing. So part of this is to say to our federal officials that they should step up and make this happen for the residents of Orange County who suffered damage. The next issue is Governor Hochul has said publicly that she created a fund of $3 million for people to get assistance, individuals, due to this devastation. However, it came with income caps, and I asked Carrie Ann to give this out. I think you all have it. The income caps aren't working here in Orange County. They might work in Buffalo where the governor's from, but they don't work here. You'll see a family of one. If you have a household income of $66,000 or more, you get nothing. If you have, 2 people in the house, it's $76,200. 3 people in the house, $85,700. 4 people in the house, $95,200. 5 people in the house, $103,000 roughly. 6 people in the house, $110,000. 7 people in the house, $118,000, and 8 people in the house, $125,000. If you make more than those numbers in those categories, you get nothing. I think everybody here knows that to live in Orange County, if you had a household income of $66,000, you probably wouldn't own your own house. I guess it's possible if you're a senior citizen and all your other bills are paid. But as the claims were coming in, this came about because of my conversation with Commissioner Casey last night. There's a bunch of people in my community with significant damage, and the income numbers, just no one in Cornwall could get a nickel. I talked to legislator Tortel this morning. She's unfortunately out of town and couldn't be here.
Yep.
And she's suffering the same, or seeing the same issues in her community. She said that she reached out to both Senator Skoufis and Assemblyman Ekis to help talk to the governor and get these numbers changed. And I know to date she has not gotten a response, and I haven't seen these checked. These numbers were printed today off the computer while I was driving here by legislative staff. So these numbers didn't change. That's what people are stuck with. Everybody who might be watching this at home, the county has the 311 line, which is typically for mental health. It's also currently being used for claims. I think, and Alan will correct me, we need at least 36 million in individual damages to qualify.
Individual is number of structures of people who actually live here in those houses. And they have to meet certain criteria, which I'm about to tell you, base for the house has to be. So we do not meet the criteria you impose right now because almost everybody there is a renter. So it has to be primary residence. Now, one thing you could do is that number is not subjective. They pick it based on some kind of algorithm that they use, and 50 is a number. They can lower it. So you might want to do that.
They can lower to 50,000.
50 houses. 50 homes.
Are you talking about FEMA or are you talking about the
Some of FEMA.
for individual assistance?
Yeah, individual assistance is FEMA. And the criteria for that, in fact, those both the damage assessment and operation. And the number of homes that have to meet the criteria is 50 based on the algorithm. they use. 50 destroyed, major damage or destroyed. The criteria is to result in that in the county. Goes county by county. It does go by county. But you have to live, you know, to get, live in the county. You don't have 50. Because you have to own the house, and your primary residence, you gotta live there. These are almost all renters.
So a lot of the damage in Highland Falls was renters. The landlord gets nothing because he doesn't live there. The tenant gets nothing because they don't own it. Farmers obviously get nothing. So the pile of money that's been promised to Orange County, the municipalities are gonna do great. Orange County's gonna be made whole. The towns, villages are gonna be, I think, made whole. I'm sure the state's making itself whole from FEMA, I assume. I mean, Route 218 is gone. Just tremendous damage out there throughout the county. Many of our roads were destroyed over that way. We had in Cornwall, a car actually get sucked right into the creek by the Canterbury Inn. 2 people had to crawl out the windows, clean the trees. The fire department rescued them. I mean, it was just incredible. In Fort Montgomery, we all know the woman lost her life, and I think her house went down to earth as well. So it was unbelievable stuff. I mean, houses that have been there for years, it's gone. And it wasn't a hurricane, so I guess does that matter in classification? So I already, and I thank the county attorney. I think Mr. Golden, you wrote this probably last night before you went to bed, because I talked to the county executive last night after I talked to Commissioner Casey. And that's when we came up with this. That's why it's at Ways and Means, because otherwise it would have been consent on the floor with nobody having an opportunity to hear about it and discuss it. I do think it needs to be tweaked a little, because I would like it sent to all of our federal officials and state officials, as well as the governor, just so they know that, you know, Orange County has residents that have severe damage that are going to get nothing. And with these income figures, and also not only the income figures, you have to own the home. And it's just not, it's not going to help the people who need it. You know, I know Tom Fagione comes with quotes, but this is a classic Ronald Reagan. Knock on the door and say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Well, that's what the state officials did, but they're not bringing any money. It's a $3 million pot that no one can get their hands on. And I think that's the biggest problem. So I think it behooves all of us to reach out to the governor and our state officials, and that's what this is going to do. I would like to have Betsy or Rick tweak it a little to add that we should mail it to the individuals that represent us, things of that nature.
So even the landlords, they would have to go after, or go through this.
It has to be your primary residence.
Their own insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out of luck unless they get something from their own insurance, which again, who probably has flood insurance and how
And one of the things with this organization, RDAC, is they're gonna look at your insurance, what your coverage is in place. And they're expecting your insurance to cover most.
Most of the people I've spoken to in my community do not have flood insurance. Some areas that got flooded have never been flooded before because of runoff from the mountains and things of that nature. The usual places that get flooded were all flooded, don't get me wrong, but there were new areas that were flooded because of massive rain. And it was a spot storm, like I think Newburgh got hardly any damage. It was just
Not much damage,
Yeah,
just,
it was
just
incredible.
2 or 3 inches of rain. Yeah.
I had photos on my phone from during the storm, if anybody wants to see them.
Just so you know, the director of the National Weather Service called me personally and apologized because they missed the forecast. The model just didn't show it because I had some maps I'm not interested in, but essentially the storm just kind of came up straight, right up the mountain range and just sort of stalled. So you get, 8 inches of rain down Highland Falls, 8 inches of rain up on top of the mountain, which is now racing down the hill, and you get some of that at the bottom.
Even if they called it right, there's nothing you could do.
There's nothing. I mean, we started, I have pictures of the forecast. We were thinking 2 inches of heavy rain over 12 hours. Which is nothing. So as the 911 calls started coming in, I started getting text messages from the forest supervisor. Brenda and I talked, I better get in, see what happens here. It just,
Mountains can block things or mountains can make things explode. I mean,
well, so, the county executive, I called him and said, hey, I'm gonna go open up the EOC. don't you come with me? We'll go out to Highland Farms. And I started headed that way with him. Brendan grabbed me by the collar and said, "You're not going out there. You're running this." So Steve was stuck out there for several hours because the roads just washed out. So,
Yeah.
big call.
I had someone call for a container and talking with her, she literally had damage to her house, but she also in the middle of the storm, she just watched her car float away. Down the street somewhere. So it was terrible. It was terrible. Any other comments
I
from?
just- Do you have the numbers on how many people put in claims, to call on that 311 line where you're tracking that? And we encourage everybody to continue to do that, because the more you get, the more I think you'll get attention of our federal and state officials.
Yeah, I guess you want to say it's. So.
If you can't find it, you can just let us know.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Okay, Mr. Golden?
Yes, let me just interject one other point. We were advised by Cornell Cooperative Extension that in addition to the flooding in that area, there was also over 800 acres of farmland in the Black Dirt region that sustained damage because of the flooding with an approximate price tag of 8 to 10 million. So it may make sense to broaden this a little bit to include the Black Dirt area that was severely impacted by the flooding. And I can make all of the, if you want me to do that, I can make that as well as the modification.
Sure.
Legislature Hines suggested with respect to building here under another resolve that sent to all elected officials representing Orange County, federal and state level.
Should we do two, one for FEMA and one for the governor's piece, or?
No, it won't make any difference. We'll just keep the one. That way, the federal government has, I don't even want to limit it to FEMA. And I specifically didn't limit it here. And didn't limit it to the governor's 1/8 package. The way I wanted to go ahead and address it was to generally, both the federal and state governments to use whatever, as I say here, to federal and state officials at every level to use their best efforts and access to greatest resources. So they can have various departments to FEMA that can go ahead and come up with funds if they really want to.
And I think we could vote on it in its current form and then just substitute at the session. Is that correct, Betsy?
We could vote on the resolution right now with the anticipation of these changes being made, if that's sufficient.
Okay, good. All right.
So I'll add that in with respect to Black Dirt area.
Yes, I think so.
Yes, we had
Al?
1,340 people put in.
1345.
So we have to continue to spread that word is the bottom line. Most
Absolutely.
people are not applying because they're used to being told no.
And I'll reflect that as well, but it's approximately 1,100. I'll put in over 1,300 counties.
And climbing, because I
I
know
said over 1,300.
most people have not applied because they didn't get the word. It just came out in some of the newspapers. Yeah, it just came out in some of the local newspapers this week. I know the publication of the town of Highlands and the town of Cornwall did have it just this week.
So Kevin, you're hoping that they say all, that whole.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, right now it's, the governor's not going to spend
Right.
over a few bucks on this that no one can qualify. I can't say no one. Very few people will qualify for 3 million. The ones who need it the most are definitely not going to get it because they're tenants that lost their belongings. Let's face it, if the landlords don't get the money, what's going to happen? They're not going to clean it up. The building's going to get moldy and the people are still going to be living there. It's just what's going to happen. You can see it.
Or the building be condemned and we'll have to move out.
conversely, I have people that have beautiful large homes that lost the bridges to their homes, $50,000 in damage to get from the road to their house because their bridge is wiped out, and they're told they're getting nothing. Why should they get nothing? It's like two people walking down the street and someone comes up to rob you. One guy has 1,000 in his pocket, the other guy has 100. And they say, oh, you only got 100 in your pocket, we'll get you your money back. But the guy with 1,000, you probably don't need any more money. That's not the way it should be. It should be fair to everybody. I mean, everybody suffered the damage. It doesn't matter how much money you make or what you do for a living. If you suffer damage, you should take care of it.
Truth is, this really shouldn't even have a limit on it. Mr. O'Donnell.
So do we have a point person for all these claims?
Yes.
Dominic's the point person, so everything's going through Dominic, and we'll get a package at the end, 6 months from now. Be like, I mean, we're still finishing up. Sandy, any Sandy yet?
It's government, takes time. Crazy. All right, any other comments? Mr. Brett.
Just got a text that says public campaign finance has $25 million. The state government is only dedicating $3 million to residential songs for display.
Yes, definitely. There really shouldn't be a limit. All right, any other comments? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now Betsy has told me that I should go back and we should vote on the no for real property, even though it's a no, we are still accepting the commissioner's recommendation. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, Carrie Ann, do you have those things to hand out? What? Don't go anywhere. Just additional information from the last joint Ways and Means and E&E committee meeting. Carrie Ann has a handout. It turns out that there was additional information that should have been or could have been presented. And again, Dr. Young is on the foundation, so I'm surprised that she didn't know the answers. But Nick did have a copy of an audit from Bonadio of the college and the foundation from 2022. And you'll see on the copies of the page that are outlined here that on page 17, you have the answer that I was asking about 20 times about net assets. And it talks about the fund at that time balance was $18,256,215 and $14,018,313. That is the amount that they were talking about with donor restrictions. Unfortunately, they were trying to say that, well, almost everything has restrictions on it. Well, the truth is in 2022, there was $4,237,902 without restrictions. And if you go to the next page, again, this highlights what was also discussed with their net position. There's different classifications for investments where there's restricted, non-expendable, restricted, expendable, which we heard about, but they didn't say, or they didn't want to say, the unrestricted net position, like I was asking, is derived principally from student tuition and fees and investment income and is spent to meet the objectives of the college. So interest income is unrestricted. It's not restricted like they tried to say. And so I just wanted to make that clear for the record, for everybody to see. And leadership will be having a future meeting with Dr. Young and the foundation as well. So I just wanted to change it, maybe? Well, I'm doing some research as to who actually oversees the foundation. It's kind of nebulous at the moment as to who the foundation reports to. If you look on the internet, they are a 501c3 and a couple other letters. So they, have a board, and of course, as the president of the college, Dr. Young is on that board. So I'm surprised she didn't know some of these facts. But we're researching as to who really should have oversight. I honestly think the foundation should probably report to the trustees. You know, so that the trustees that were in the audience, you know, they should know everything about the foundation. So it was just a point of information. I would just want to clarify the record. All right, so motion to adjourn is in order. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you for coming, everyone. Stay dry.